Well, good morning, everybody. I'm just getting ready to head off to work with some families and to prepare for my parent leadership uh, group this evening. Most of you know, if you've watched some of my videos, that I do facilitate a parent leadership group every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. It's an awesome group that focuses on um, a framework of integrity. Because when we think of leaders, we often think of leaders who have integrity, and we all know that we love to be around people who have integrity. And so, what I'm sharing with parents every Tuesday night is the idea that um, it gets simpler. You just focus on your own integrity, you become more attractive, your kids want to look up to you, you feel better as a person. So yeah, this is a free group um, that exists in Surrey, British Columbia, and it is open to the public for all parents. And it's a drop-in group. People don't have to commit to any length of time. Come for one or as many as they would like. And any Tuesday night, the room will be full of parents who've been coming for years and others who are there for their first time. So if you're in the area, even as a professional, and you'd like to drop in and see what's going on, you're welcome to do that. It's a bit of a fishbowl where people can check it out. And if you're somebody who works for an agency and you'd like to have a group like this um, in your agency or somewhere in your community, shoot me a text, a message, and we can have a chat about that. Because I am in communication with people on a regular basis to get groups like this off the ground um, in their communities, in their schools, um, in their yeah, just and if you're a social worker or counselor, and you've got an office building there where you're seeing clients regularly, you have high caseloads. It's just great to have a group there rather than clients go out into the community. Now, that all being said, I wanted to share a reflection with you today. Um, I'm sure I'll share it in tonight's group. But I hope you're having a good day. Like I said, I'm just here sipping my coffee, and it's a bit of a chilly week for us here up in British Columbia and Pacific Northwest in the Washington State area. It's been at times temperatures dropping down to about 17 degrees Fahrenheit when the wind is blowing pretty hard. Otherwise, it's anywhere from 20 to 27 right now with a little bit of snow from time to time. But that being said, we have great weather up here, so nothing to complain about. And other than this particular week, it's felt like springtime is on its way. So what I wanted to share with you really quick is just I think a little bit of an observation that I at first chuckled about, but I also saw it as a manifestation, if you will, of what I focus on quite a bit is the phenomena of magnified entitlement and indulgence that we're seeing in society right now. Um, Now, if you remember what I said in other videos, that the core, if you will, of this magnified entitlement and indulgence phenomena is really deeply rooted in who we are as human beings. Now, developmentally speaking, we all started out as infants, and when we think about characteristics or traits of what it means to be infantile, we're going to see narcissism, egocentricity, grandiosity, pursuit of instant gratification, all these things that we would consider immature, all these things that we know need to be tempered and transformed as we go through the maturation and individuation process to become mature, contributing adults in society. Now, it's interesting though, and I'm sure you've seen it, and this is just one of the facets of what we've been seeing for a little bit here, is what I call, it's a strange little title, but it's just something I threw together, the elongation of adolescence. And I guess we could say childhood too. The elongation of childhood and adolescence in our society. I'm sure, like as you've lived in your community, you see kids going back and forth to school. I see that it's not uncommon these days, is it not, to see kids going to school in their pajamas? Kids going to school in their sweats. Uh, it's almost like um, this code of conduct or code of honor that used to be in place, that when you went to a school where you held the teachers and the staff and the administrators, for instance, in reverence, that you went to school ideally with your best self. You at least got up and took a shower. Um, you prepared yourself. You prepared yourself to receive what the teachers and things had given you. But these days, it's you've seen more and more of a loss, if you will, of this code of honor and this code of conduct and this reverence that we have, if you will, for adults. Now, I'm wondering why that is. And one of the things that I've also noticed over the last maybe couple of decades, but have you ever heard the term, or a term similar to, it's like 40 is the new 30, 50 is the new 40, etc., etc. 60 is the new 30. And so what we begin to see is that even in the adult world, for a number of decades right now, adults have been hanging on, trying to hang on to, if you will, adolescent behavior rather than moving into adult behavior. Now, what is the, is childhood and adolescence, what is that behavior about? Again, it's an extended period of self-infatuation. It's an extended period of comparing yourself to somebody else. It's an extended period of confusion in terms of who one is and the search to belong to a particular group. It's the magnified what do you want to call it? Desperation to be seen, to be validated, getting one's worth from what others think, etc. That we would call the drama, of adolescence. So it's about, all about being seen, etc. And so you begin to see many more adults who are, if you will, self-infatuated, wanting to be seen as special. There's a whole, if you will, field of psychology out there that talks about making yourself special, putting yourself first, being number one. And yet, as good as that sounds, when that message comes embedded or enmeshed in a magnified sense of entitlement, because you got to remember what that's about. That's about being insecure. Hence the exaggerated levels of wanting to be special, wanting to be seen, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be seen as attractive, etc. I suppose most notably we're seeing this in the digital world right now, and all the research coming out of that world. And believe me, it's not just teens that are infatuated with how many likes they get, what happens to them emotionally, being destabilized when they're not liked, etc., comparing themselves to other folks on there, etc., ignoring duties, not taking care of oneself in terms of getting proper nutrition and sleep, etc. All those things that are going on with this self-infatuation and this fixation with digital technology and what it can offer. Adults are just as as knee deep in it as the adolescents are. So, what really should we be seeing, there? Or what is it we're not seeing? Let me just kind of add a little piece to that. Is that when one is stuck in adolescence, an adolescent mindset, child mindset, you got to remember, excuse me, children, especially children, but adolescents learn how to regulate their emotions based upon how adults regulate their emotions. So if we have an elongated adolescence, meaning our adults are hanging on to adolescent traits longer than they should be, which causes them to be in a state of personal um, anxiety, which again, statistics are showing that that is increasing, then it means that our young people cannot look up to the adults in the world to help regulate themselves and to also find a discipline in which they can help self-regulate. Excuse me, coming down with a little bit of a cough here. I was hoping to be able to get this out before it hit a little bit more significantly. I'm going to grab a sip of coffee here. So, so what we're seeing is higher incidences of anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation across the board, whether it be in children, young adults, or even adults. The adults in the community should be somebody that our youth can look up to see hopefully quite the opposite. Well, what are some of the trademarks of being mature? Well, first of all, I like to think it's a less is more principle. It's paradoxical. When we're younger, we think more is more. The more you have, the better you feel. The more, we just keep adding and adding and adding things to ourselves to fuel this specialness. Now, if we're grown up, we have gone down that road and realized how incredibly exhausting that can be. There's got to be a better way. And this is one of the initiatory thresholds into adulthood, which is to be able to understand this paradox. The paradox of less is more. The more you know, the more you don't know. All healthy disciplines and spiritual traditions offer that paradox. It's a beautiful check and balance system that exists within the psyche and is incredibly necessary in order to generate humility while at the same time expanding our knowledge. So a less is more paradoxical principle is there. You see less in self-infatuation, less desire for specialness, less busyness, less drama, less, in terms of being frantic in the environment, essentially more calmness, and I think greater contentment, don't we? To be content with what we have. Now, in order to reach that level of contentment, we have got to go down, of course, these roads of trying to attain and attain and attain and finding that they're nothing but what I like to call a false grail. So we go down those roads really to find, if you will, in the Arthurian legend, really the true grail, the life-giving, if you will, paradoxical secret. And that is in simplicity. To live a simple life and to have appreciation and gratitude for what we have, which leads to deep contentment and satisfaction. You see, in the adolescent world, in the child world, the goal is to be happy, which, by the way, you can also see throughout society in our adult workspaces. How many of you have participated in or have seen this increase of staff who feel like in the workplace they want to play? That rather than that somehow being generative and contributing to a cause or community is not satisfying in and of itself. There has to be playtime. And the playtime has to be offered by the employer. You see, in the past, it wasn't that way. And we did self-care outside of the work environment. But we've seen an increase in this idea that somehow, like the kids who want to wear their pajamas going to school, there's this pursuit of happiness rather than contentment and deep satisfaction. Now, we all know that the word happiness comes from the same root as happenstance, which actually means when something occurs by chance. That's why often happiness is fleeting, and that we constantly have to pursue it because it's fickle. And so I always say in my parents group, what would you really want your kids to have? Happiness or contentment and deep satisfaction? Most parents, when offered that option, choose contentment and deep satisfaction. Then that requires the parent to give up their idea that they want their kids to be happy. Happiness will show up on its own when a person has integrity. When a person pursues integrity and begins to achieve a deep sense of purpose and contentment and satisfaction, you've got something better than happiness. Because we all know happiness is fleeting. So why shoot for that? Why make that a goal when there's something much better offered? One of the other things that I'll say real quick, and I'll wrap up and get on my way, is a principle that I've been using for years in the groups that I lead and in sharing with parents, and that is the need to give principle. The need to give principle. Now, we all know this to be true, is that when we give something positive to another person, we feel good. The giver feels good as well, maybe even more. That's why in most of my sessions that I do with families and with couples, etc., I have them practice this principle, which I call an appreciation principle or an appreciation exercise. I ask them to appreciate each other at least once a day, if not more. And I also give them coaching on how to do the appreciation. Because what you want to do is you want the language to offer an appreciation of not what somebody does, because that's appreciation based on condition. You want it to be unconditional appreciation, and so you focus it on another area. And they begin to practice this. Now, another way I can set this up is to say to the person, what would you like to get from your children? What would you like to get from your spouse? What would you like to get from your employer? Let's say somebody might say, okay, well, encouragement, support. Okay, that's great. But according to the need to give principle, now you need to go out and start doing that to other people. Start offering encouragement to people. Start offering support. Start offering recognition. Whatever it is you think you need, you're called to give. Now, when I do this right in sessions, I will do it right in sessions, and oftentimes I'll do it at the end of a session in order to help the family or couple experience, if you will, some enlightenment, some encouragement right at the end of a session. And I'll quiz people right there and say, how did that feel? They'll say, well, that kind of felt weird. But you know what I noticed is that when you did it, you smiled. You both smiled, and you both tried to hold back a smile too. It felt good, didn't it? And they'll agree that it did feel good. I said, isn't that interesting? You gave to that other person the very thing that you thought you needed, and now you're feeling good. See, that's paradoxical. The need to give principle. Give to the other person what you think you needed, and you actually get it. Now, this is a mature concept, and it makes no sense to the adolescent. It makes no sense to the child. But to a mature adult, it makes perfect sense. And why is this? Because ultimately, a person knows that they're on the planet to give something. That they're gifted and they have a promise to themselves and to everybody else to make good on that promise. And this is a whole other piece of work that I do with families and individuals in sessions. And that is helping people reconnect with what I call their internal personal code of honor, their deeply held convictions, weaving that into a personal, if you will, mythological uh, mission statement. So they begin to recover their true identity. And this true identity is inscribed in a deeper part of the psyche. And this inscription contains a declaration of what the person has promised to be. And it is when people get dislocated from this code of honor and from this inscription and fall down into what I call kind of the man-made societal, family, tribal prescription, which, like family systems theory, everybody gets a prescribed role. When we get encased in that, entrapped in the prescription, and dislocated by default from our inscription, is when things go terribly sideways. People become terribly distressed and diseased. So I'm going to leave that there for now, as I'm now you can see I'm getting a little jacked up for tonight's presentation and the family that I'm going to meet here in just about an hour. So feel free to email me with any observations, questions, or any of the work that you're doing. I'll be very interested in hearing about. Again, text me, message me if you'd like to know more about the parent leadership groups and other groups that I facilitate. I've got a couple of nights right now through my week that I'm looking to fill with some facilitation opportunities. So if you know of anybody who's needing to bring in a contracted facilitator, or like to build an awesome program, let them know I'm here and biting at the bit to do that. So you guys have a great day, and again, thank you for your passion and caring in the work that you do. Take care.